Welcome to the Law Sector Employability webinar. My name is Jos Harrison. I am actually the careers consultant linked to the law school. And I'm joined today by two brilliant guests, both who are law graduates from Newcastle, fairly recent law graduates from Newcastle, Amy and Mariko. I'm going to leave them to introduce themselves to you. So without further ado, Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Jos. I'm Amy. I'm just going to speak briefly about kind of my time at university and kind of what I've done since university as well. I'm Amy. I'm a financial planning assistant at RBC Brewin Dolphin currently in Manchester, which is essentially I'm a trainee financial advisor. So I've not gone down the law route after graduating. I really liked economics at school. I really liked finance. So I did my law degree and then chose the wealth management route. So a little bit about me first. I'll keep this really brief. I'm originally from near Leeds. At A-level, I know you guys are kind of waiting for your results at the moment, I think. At A-level, I did history, economics and psychology, and I achieved ABB. So the partner scheme is what enabled me to get into Newcastle University, essentially, because at the time it was AAA. I don't know if that's changed. So history, economics, psychology at A-levels. I knew I always wanted to be a barrister from about the age of 16. That's why I wanted to go into law, do a law degree. So the aspirations of going to barrister, I visited Newcastle University on an open day, visited various universities across the north as well. And I loved Newcastle as soon as I got there on the open day. It was a beautiful, sunny day. The law talk was amazing. I had a tour around. I just loved Newcastle, so that was my first choice. Northumbria was my second because I just wanted to go to Newcastle as a city. On results day, I think I missed out on Newcastle actually, and I had Northumbria, but then I got a remark and was able to go to Newcastle with the ABB. So just to talk a little bit about actually my life at university. So with your law degree, your first and second year, they're compulsory modules. So you don't get a choice in what you do, but then in third year, you get to choose your different modules. So kind of you'll figure out what you enjoy. I did environmental law, evidence, but also the academic life, there's so much opportunity with the law degree as well, just outside of studying. So you'll see the picture on the left, that's the law ball. I went to the law ball every year. It's the biggest ball at uni, essentially. All of the courses are kind of jealous of the law ball. We had ours at the Hilton. It was amazing. But also at university with law, there's a trip each year somewhere abroad. So I think it was my first year, I went to Amsterdam with fellow students on the law course. It's a really sociable course, is law, just because you all have the same modules throughout first and second year. So different courses, you can choose different modules sometimes in first and second year, but law, you've all got the same, so you get to know each other really, really well. So we went on the law trip together. And there's also other extracurricular kind of activities within the law degree as well. So in my third year, I became a paralegal at Ligacar, which was an opportunity they advertised where I could volunteer each day for a term within a charity that provided free legal advice to people with life-limiting illnesses. And that was a really life kind of career-changing moment for me, because I realized I really wanted to help people at kind of the most vulnerable. The corporate side, sorry, Mariko, it's not the side I wanted to go. So even though it was voluntary basis, I kind of just applied for it to see how it went. It really did change how I viewed my career. And I absolutely, if you go to Newcastle, get involved with as much as you can. You'll figure out what you want and what you don't want to do. And I absolutely loved volunteering in the charity sector as a paralegal. So just kind of moving on from the studying, also outside of the actual law degree, the studying part, there's so many opportunities in the wider university. So you see a picture on there, me on the right. So that's a ski trip. I went there on second year to France. It's the best holiday I've ever been on. I fell in love with skiing. I've wanted to go back skiing ever since. I think there was about 700 people, I think, that went from the university. Best trip ever, absolutely loved it. But apart from that, you've also got other kind of activities as well. So if you're into sports, there's lots of intramural, different sports teams representing the university as well. I set up a netball team with my friends, just an intramural one, kind of a friendly one. But also, like, if you want to take it a level up, so in second year, my best friend who I lived with, she on a whim just went to a frisbee kind of taster game, and now she's playing in the world championship. So I would definitely encourage you, just get involved with what you can, try new things. Newcastle's got so much opportunity in that regard. And then I like I mentioned, I really like the charity section. So I joined a society called Helping Our Homeless. And we made like a shoebox appeal. We did bake sales all over the university, raising money for a homeless charity that was set up with it by a Newcastle University student. And very finally, one kind of life-changing, well, career-changing thing that I participated in, which I think is still going at Newcastle, is Nest, which is an amazing kind of event that refugees come into Newcastle into the student union, and we taught them kind of English lessons, maths lessons, help them progress with their kind of English language. And it was an amazing experience, very humbling. And I really realized I want to help people. That's kind of the career that I wanted to go down. So that was me at uni. I got first year, there was a lot of going out. Second and third year, I really got involved with university, a lot of kind of activities and extracurricular. And I would definitely encourage you to do the same. And then I graduated in 2019 with a 2-1. And I did realise that I didn't want to go into law. I didn't take the both route because I'm rubbish at public speaking. So I realised that quite quickly. But do you know what? That's probably just from practice, because I have no practice. So get involved with what you can. But yeah, so I like I said, I really enjoyed economics at A level. I loved finance. And after university, I wanted to go travelling. So to fund the travelling, I got myself a job in a wealth management company in Newcastle. And about 6 months later, COVID hit. So there was no travelling on the cards then. And I ended up staying 2 years at the company. I loved it. I love wealth management. Again, you get to work with people. It's very, very similar to a law career, but you're just advising on a different subject, essentially. So wealth management in Newcastle. I stayed in Newcastle for 2 years after university. I absolutely loved Newcastle as a city. If you do end up going to Newcastle, you'll find a lot of people do stay after university as well. I lived in Jesmond, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with. That's kind of the student part where everyone moves in second and third year, and it's a gorgeous part of the city. So yeah, I stayed there 2 years after. Worked as a client manager, speaking to clients about the finances. And that's when I realized I want to be a financial advisor. So very recently, just in October, I moved to Manchester, and I now work for RBC Brewin Dolphin, which is one of the biggest wealth managers in the UK, one of the oldest. We've recently been acquired by Royal Bank of Canada, which is one of the biggest banks in the world, Canadian company by the name. And I am now on an apprenticeship. So at the end, I will be a qualified financial advisor. 20% of my time of my job has to be off the job learning. So soft skills, workshops. My apprenticeship's all paid for, all my exams are paid for, and I did my first exam yesterday, and I'm happy to say I passed. So yeah, I'm training to be a financial advisor, and the similarities between law and financial advice is kind of crazy how similar it is. Like I said, I'm just hopefully going to be, by the time I am advising on a different subject, and solicitors and financial advisors work very, very close together, we refer clients across from each other. So I actually use my alumni and my friends that I met at university as part of my network. And you'll realise in law network, I had this in the first lecture, it's very, very important. So when you're part of Newcastle or whatever university you go to, get involved, get to know the people around you. They will be the people you chat to and you'll become friends with, but also you'll use in your professional life as well to help each other out. So yeah, that's all about me really. Like I say, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the box. But there are also my details as well. So if you do have any questions about wealth management law, just add me on LinkedIn and pop any questions if you think of any after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. That's brilliant. Okay, right. We are now going to move on to our second speaker, Mariko. Over to you.
Thanks, Charles. I graduated Newcastle Uni in 2018. So I grew up in the northeast, about an hour away from Newcastle, and kind of similar to Amy, did a bunch of open days at different unis around the north, and really loved Newcastle. I was kind of familiar with it, having grown up in the northeast. So ended up applying to there and started in 2015. I had an interest in law. I think it was always a subject that I was kind of broadly interested in. And then, to be honest, part of it was because part of deciding to do law at uni was because I preferred essay type subjects and thought that it would be quite an employable degree and like quite a transferable degree. So that was something that I thought about at the time and thought, well, at least I enjoy the subject matter and then I'll just see what I want to do with it afterwards, as I'm kind of going with it. And then moved to Newcastle. I would just reiterate what Amy said, that it's a great city to be a student in. There's a really high student population between Northumbria and Newcastle, so it means that there's like constantly things to do. Things are really well catered for students. You quickly make a lot of friends there because there's so many people in the city that are in a similar situation to you. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to get started there. So then, similar to Amy, I kind of did, obviously you do your sort of normal academic courses through the uni, and you have your third year as like a sort of optional year. And on top of that, I did different sort of extracurricular activities, played a bit of sports. I did mooting, which is like a mock courtroom sort of competition that the law school runs. I did client interviewing, which is another sort of like the courses that they run to as a bit of a competition, but also to prepare you for the soft skills side of a career in law or any other career really. So things like public speaking to clients, negotiating, they provide different competitions and courses to sort of help with all of that side of things. So I did that while I was at uni too, and then eventually became the client interviewing officer in the law school sort of Eldon Society Committee, which was good. Another great way to sort of meet people, different people across the law school, and then you end up speaking more to staff when you're organising events and speaking with local firms and employers, again to sort of help get sponsorship or for people to judge some of these competitions. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to get involved with. I also did a lot of charity work at uni. So when I first started in first year, I think I was conscious that I wanted to try and get as much experience, like work experience, as possible. It wasn't something I'd had a massive amount of before uni. Neither of my parents had a career in law, and I wasn't really, other than like the odd part-time job, I hadn't had that much work experience. So I ended up working in a charity throughout my degree, sort of part-time, which was great and exposed me, to different people, and like the causes that they were dealing with were really interesting. And then on top of that, I did a fair bit of work experience in the legal sector, which is how I ended up deciding to pursue a career in law. I did work experience for like big sort of commercial firms similar to where I work now, as well as sort of smaller high street practices and shadowing barristers, etc. And that's something that I think is really great for your experience from uni, is that you don't really have to have the contacts going into it, and you shouldn't be intimidated if you don't, because the opportunities are there for you, whether it's formal schemes that you can apply for. Some of those were like an application form type thing, Or, for example, I was on the Junior Lawyers Committee for Newcastle, just got chatting to people that worked in different firms across Newcastle there. And some of them just said, you know, you're welcome to come along, like, you know, during one of your weeks of your holidays, if you want to come and see a trial, or you can shadow one of my colleagues. And that's how I kind of got my work experience. So opportunities are definitely there. So kind of had that variety of experience and applied for my training contract in my second year of uni and managed to get it. So then graduated, did my LPC, which I think is now changed into the SQE if any of you eventually do want to qualify into law. But did that and then started my training contract later that summer at Squires, where I am now. So I've always been based in their Leeds office and did my 2-year training contract, part of which fell over sort of COVID time. So did part of that from home. And then because we're a general commercial firm, amongst seats that I did, for example, like financial regulation, corporate litigation, etc. I also did an employment seat, which is where I'm qualified now. I qualified in 2021, so I'm just short of 2 years qualified. And yeah, really enjoyed my career. Employment is more of a people-focused side of what is quite a commercial business, which I really like. I think a training contract is a great opportunity to try different things. And this was the sort of side that appealed to me a bit more. It's a bit more relatable. So yeah, I've continued to sort of grow my caseload and work since then. But I do look back to my time at Newcastle and think it gave me sort of great stepping stones for my career, whether that's the soft skills or the academic side of it, which I still use now, or just sort of general work experience and just helping me decide what I wanted to do with my career. It was all really, really useful. So happy to also answer any questions if you've got some.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mariko. Okay, yeah, so thanks both Mariko and Amy. So we'll now take some of the questions from you, and I can see that we've got some here that you've typed in already, but please do, if anything else has occurred to you, please take this opportunity to pick their brains and hear it from people who've been there and done it. Just before I go into the questions, I'll just say one thing, because Amy and Mariko both referred to the structure of their degree and how at their time doing law at Newcastle, you could only choose electives in your final year. Some of you might know that structure's now changed. So you can kind of choose things that you're interested in a bit earlier on. You don't have to wait till your final year. Okay, but let's have a look at some questions that we have here. So the first one is from Caitlin. Thank you very much, Caitlin. And it's for Amy. So Caitlin says, Amy, I read up and saw that you did some volunteering. And I know you mentioned that actually, didn't you, just now, Amy? So how did you get that? And how did you find it? That's the first part. So do you want to deal with that? Then I'll read out Caitlin's other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So at university, I did various volunteering I mentioned before. So the legal care, the paralegal, that was advertised by the law school. So I think the charity approached the law school and then the law school advertised it. And I applied. I think there was quite a few positions for that. So that's how I got that one. I just applied through the law school. And then I did other kind of volunteering positions with Nest, and that was run by students through like the student union. So Newcastle has a big page of like all volunteering opportunities. So there's a lot of volunteering available through the student union as well. And again, that's sometimes just as simple as an email across, just to contact someone, say, asking for information about when the first session is. There's various ways to volunteer. The law school does advertise some, but then the student union hosts a lot as well, if that's okay.
I think from memory, am I right in saying that legal care is something that they reserve for final year students?
Yeah.
Yes, there are other things, like street law and Mackenzie's Friends, I think, that you can do earlier on in your degree, but yeah, okay, grand, thank you. Oops. Okay, back to Caitlin's other questions. So she's asking, how are you finding studying to become a financial advisor? And connected to that, is there any study strategy you learned from university that is currently helping you to study to become a financial advisor?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. So I'm finding studying, so I'm nearly 3 years, I hit 2 minutes out of university now. So I was very keen to start my exams as soon as I left university. I just wanted to carry on learning through like logistics. That wasn't possible, so I've started doing it at the new company that I work for now. So I'm finding studying less pressure than university because I have one exam every 3 months, whereas at university you'll have quite a few exams kind of within like 3 or 4 weeks. But I'm definitely using a lot of skills I used at university. That's essentially how I am revising, exactly how I did at university. So leading up to my exam I had yesterday, I've been revising for kind of the past month, 2 months. It's just a study book. So it's very much like university, actually. We had the odd workshop that happens every 2 weeks, so kind of like a lecture, but then the rest is self-motivating. You get a book and you have to learn from that. And then with my company at ABC Brewin Dolphin, we actually get study leave as well. So I had Thursday, Friday off paid, but study leave. So just spent the days in Manchester Library like I did at university at the Robinson Library, just studying. I found out at university I study so much better in the morning. So quite often I get up early at university and then kind of have the evening off from revision, get a good night's sleep. And that's exactly how I approached my financial advice exams as well. So I learned a lot from university. And the exams for financial advice, law gives you such an advantage I can't explain. I have a full section on regulation legislation, and it's basically everything I learned at university, which gives me a massive head start on everyone else that hasn't done law. Also, I get an exemption when I go for my advanced exams, which means that I will be a chartered eventually. I actually get an exemption because of the law degree, so I don't have to take as many exams as everyone else. So law, I did forget to mention this in the presentation, it opens a lot of doors, even if it's not necessarily law. It's so similar to financial advice. Law it's in every part of industry. There's always law regulating something, so I can apply my degree to kind of almost any industry, and financial advice is a lot of crossover because it is such a highly regulated area. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much, Amy. We've got lots and lots of questions now, so I'm kind of scrolling through them, and I've just spotted one here from Georgia, kind of while you're talking about your time as a financial advisor. Georgia's asking how long it'll take you to become a financial advisor.
Yeah, so it takes, so mine's an apprenticeship, so it's quite structured. So I take an exam every 3 months. So it would be 2 years in total. They're called RO1 to RO6 of the exams. So 6 exams in total over 2 years. However, anyone could really do these exams kind of off their own back. So some people smash them out in about like 6-7 months. But I'm taking it a bit steadier. So that means you're actually qualified by the end. And then you can go on to become chartered, which is what my company like to do. They like you to become chartered, have 5 years in industry to become chartered. So 2 years is the official, but it can vary between firm about when you can start being introduced to clients and have clients of your own.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And it's worth saying, actually, I'm just interested in you doing this graduate apprenticeship, that lots of law firms are starting to introduce this. So yeah. I'm starting to see people finishing their law degrees and going on to a graduate apprenticeship, or with a law firm doing the kind of study that you're doing. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Mariko. How did you find your trainee solicitor contract?
Well, I think they are quite well publicised, especially for the bigger firms. I think I did some there's a lot of like legal websites, whether it's like Legal Cheek or sort of Roll on Friday. There's all the sort of normal, which you'll become quite familiar with, probably during your degree. websites that you'll see. Also, a lot of the firms are really good and were good when I was at uni about coming onto campus. So along with other firms, Squires came not just for like the law fair that they have, where they also come and have a table at it. They would come in and just do general talks and bring members of staff. So I definitely met them at some of them. But I think where in terms of actually found it from, I think I Googled because I knew I wanted to either stay in Newcastle or move to Leeds because both of them are quite cities near where I grew up. So I think I looked and I think I maybe just put in like, what are the sort of top commercial firms in those cities? And Squires is one of the big 6 firms in Leeds. And that was part of the reason that I applied for it. So I think it was partly awareness from their on-campus sessions and then partly just a bit of a Google online. And then you apply online. You do your initial application form or CV online.
Brilliant, thank you. Kind of related, kind of carrying on from that a little bit, Mariko, I think I've got a question here. What resources and help did the uni offer you that you found most helpful when you were doing your vacation scheme and training contract answers?
Yeah, I got a lot of support from the uni, and I think it's something that I'd say to people is you kind of get as much out of it as you want to, because we've got a great career service with them. Just providing support there. And actually I remember we did a mock interview before one of my interviews, and then we had a sit down after one of my, I think the first training contract interview I had, because I didn't get it, and I really wasn't surprised that I didn't get it because it didn't go very well at all. And we kind of had a breakdown of how I thought it went. I think I must have got some feedback back from it, so we discussed that and we did practice questions. And then the second interview that I did was for Squires, which is where I ended up getting my job. So I think I only really engaged with the career service at the point where I'd applied and had interviews. But I'm sure if I'd have gone earlier and asked for tips about CVs, they're able to provide that support too. And I think they're quite good at signposting things that are on at the university. For example, whether that's work experience, extracurricular activities, and it's things like that that are really indirectly helpful. They're maybe not like necessarily talking about an interview, but they're all the things that you talk about when you're actually in the interview and that employers kind of want to know about. And we're great for building sort of networks and connections. So there are specific career services that the university provides a lot of, and they also sort of help with the wider sort of experience that you want to get.
I just saw a question here from Max. So Max says, I've been told that vacation placements are absolutely key to finding a training contract. He asks, is this the case? If so, what do they entail? How long are they? And how do you acquire one?
Yes, I think I'd caveat what I say with the idea that I applied for my training contract when I was in my second year of uni. So I think I did my application when I was 19 and I'm now 26. So things might have changed slightly since then. But what my experience at the time was they were definitely shifting towards doing more vacation schemes. And I think at Squires, yeah, we only hire from people from the vacation scheme. So that's right in that does seem to be the trend, rather than in the past, and I think will still be the case at some firms, you maybe just do an application form and an interview, and the interview is your training contract interview. I think that's less common now. What a vacation scheme involves is, I suppose from start to finish, I did an application form sort of online, I think a CV covering letter type thing. I then did a video assessment, like an online assessment. And then from that, you did an assessment centre, which was like a presentation and interview. And then from that, I got my vacation scheme, which was like 2 weeks at the time I did it, of basically work experience. So you get assessed, like your work gets assessed, when they give you tasks. You have like different fun, like social events to get to see the city that you might move to, and for them to get to know you in sort of like a more relaxed setting. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, I had an interview and another presentation. And that was kind of they take all that feedback together, and that's kind of what's used to determine whether you get the training contract or not. The process could vary slightly. Like I did a vacation scheme somewhere else and it wasn't as as many steps, but that's broadly what it is. Some form of interview, some form of work experience and assessment.
Great. Okay. I'm going to give Mariko's voice a rest now. And I'm going to hop back to Amy. And I'd be interested, I think, in hearing from both of you on some of these questions that people are asking about the law degree. This is to both of you, because you both spoke about doing extracurricular activities. And Amy, how did you find balancing all the things that you did with your degree? Because law is quite a full-on degree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very full on, but I think it's just a good routine. So I did the majority of my extracurricular in my third year, if I'm being honest, which was definitely the hardest year academically. But also there's a lot less contact hours I found for the modules I took in third year. So I think I actually used to have either a Monday or a Wednesday off, completely no lectures at all. I think in total I had about 12 hours contact time in third year. So that gives a lot of time for studying, but also gives a lot of time for extracurricular activities as well. I don't know if it's still a thing at Newcastle, but the whole of university had Wednesday afternoons completely off. And that was, I think the main purpose is about extracurricular. A lot of the sports teams would have their games on a Wednesday afternoon, and it just gave everyone else an opportunity to get involved with university as well. So really good routine, but there is definitely the opportunity with the amount of contact hours that you will have and the weekends as well to be able to fit it all in. I completed the NCL Plus award in third year, which is an award you get for a certain amount of hours extracurricular. So it's definitely achievable. I won't worry too much about that.
And just kind of moving on from that, Dan is asking, did either of you have a part-time job at any point? And how was that kind of into the mix with all the balancing?
Yeah. So I worked at Boots. I had that part-time job since I was 17. I would definitely say a part-time job is an amazing thing to have on a CV. Employers absolutely love it. They know you've got a work ethic. So if you do have a part-time job, it's a great thing to have. And I actually was lucky enough to go to a 0-hour contract. So I worked in Leeds. And what I would do is, I was very lucky in this sense. I could have university, the time in term time to study, to go out. And then when I went home, Easter, summer and Christmas, I would work the full holidays, as many hours as I could. So that helps me a lot with being able to fund university. But also I know there's so many part-time jobs available through Newcastle University. I didn't realise this, but I probably would have got involved. I had housemates that did this, and they pay really well, and it's really easy to get jobs as well. I think they have a job society. So yeah, I did. I've always had
jobs
a part-time
on
job.
campus.
That's it, yeah. So yeah, I've always had a part-time job since I was 17 and throughout university as well.
Yeah. And I hope that nobody's in any doubt about the usefulness of part-time jobs. I still sometimes have conversations with law students and they say, oh, I won't put it on my CV, recruiters won't be interested. Absolutely, totally and utterly, yes, I promise that they will. Whether you want to go to the bar, whether you want to be a solicitor, or whether you want to take your law degree, like Amy, in a different direction. Okay, there's an art to making the most of it and how you present it, but it's invaluable. So yeah, thank you. What about you, Mariko? Anything to say? Did you have a part-time job at all, or?
Yeah, I had sort of various from when I was at sixth form to uni, including sort of shop like retail work, and also the odd like open day or sort of helping out with the uni, which they offer like on open days and things like that, which is really sort of flexible job to pick up as and when. And I included references to both of those on like every sort of application I did. So I'd reiterate that obviously it's helpful to have specific work experience, but it's not essential. And it's also great just to show sort of wider awareness, and you are working within a part of a business aiming to essentially make money, probably in some of those part-time jobs. And that's something that is kind of common with a lot of jobs you end up doing in the future. So there's a lot of transferable skills and sort of knowledge that you can use from that. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And a question again to both of you, and this is from Ethan. What was your favourite bit about your law degree?
My favourite day, and don't hit some bad bit. My favourite day was graduating, just because I was so proud Everyone knows that a law degree isn't the easiest degree to do. And I think the sense of achievement of being able to do it and having my family on graduation day, seeing everyone else graduate as well. And it was just such a good day. I'll never forget graduating. It was a key event, and a law degree, like I said, I've not gone into law, but it's definitely helped me get where I am. People do favour law degrees. So yeah, graduation, it was amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. And what about you, Mariko? What was first of all, the favourite bit of your actual degree, and then university more broadly?
I think actual degree, this is quite broad, but maybe final year. I know you said the structure's changed now, but in terms of picking your own modules, it was really interesting to be able to do that. I did quite a range of modules. I did things like evidence, competition. I did like law, gender and sexuality, like kind of like different modules. One that was like a volunteering sort of career development module. So I really enjoyed that part of it. It's nice to kind of have the options to choose different things, and they're topics that I've never sort of studied before. So that was really interesting. And then life in general at Newcastle, I'd probably say the same as Amy in terms of the friends. I graduated in 2018, and I've been on holiday this year with some friends from uni. I see and speak to at least someone from uni. I speak to probably most days. Friends that I lived with or that were on the course are some of my best friends. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the best.
Okay. I mean, it all sounds really wonderful. It's almost making me want to apply and come into law. But Emily's got a question about the workload. I mean, we've touched on a law degree not being an easy thing. What would you both say about how you found that workload and managing it? Because it's a heavy one, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not gonna lie, first year was a little bit of a shock. I think the step up from university is quite a big one, and you've got to be very self-motivated. So first year was a bit of a shock, but past first year, and then second year, I really, really enjoyed second year. I enjoyed the modules more. Second year was my favourite year. And then third year does get a bit tougher again with the final exams at the end of the year. And I think you just got to get ahead. I did leave a lot of it a bit to last minute. So it's a law degree, you know, it's going to be a hard degree to do, but it's definitely worth it. And just having a really good routine, get ahead, get help if you need it. Your tutors, they're there to help. All the lecturers are really helpful. They have like office hours, so you can always go ask any questions you've got, make use of your seminars. So you've got the equipment there to help you. It's just using it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amy. What would you say, Mariko?
Yeah, I'd say it's quite a big workload. I think it's kind of reiterate what Amy says. It's also not a different type of learning, but it's a different structure to like what you're probably used to at A level. In that I think at A level, you're dealing with like a smaller volume of information. Whilst I definitely found my A levels difficult, I feel like when I got to university, the sort of length of reading lists and things that they would ask you to look at would be long. And I found that a bit intimidating to begin with. But I think I remember when I first joined, I used to have on a Monday, my first lecture would be at 4 p.m. And I got into a bad habit of like not really getting up or doing much with my day before that. And then I think you quickly end up having to step out of it and the biggest tip I kind of have is being organised, sort of knowing what you've got to your seminars to prepare for them in advance, try and do as much of the reading as you can, ask questions. As Amy said, the lecturers are all really approachable. So whether you ask them at the end of a lecture or in a seminar or use their office hours, I definitely did that. Definitely like read feedback I'd get on essays and went and spoke to lecturers, and that was really helpful. So there's definitely the support there, and I just say that plus getting into a good routine and finding what works for you. Amy used to study a lot during the daytime and have an evening off. So yeah, I used to just go to the library for the day when I needed to get my head down.
Okay, thank you. And what you've just said might really speak to this next question, but I think Davidson's asked a really interesting question here, and there might be something else to add from both of you. So he asks, what common mistakes did you see other people making when studying law?
Good question. Other people. I don't know about other people. I think everyone kind of has their own way of studying and own way of working. I think people fell down when they didn't work together. So this was reiterated at the beginning when I started my degree, was work together. There's going to be you might feel a bit of competition because people might be going for the same jobs, same training contract, but when you work together, it's not scale. So it's not a certain amount of people get a first, certain amount of people get a 2-1. It's if everyone gets a 2-1, everyone gets a 2-1. So work together, revise together, prepare for seminars together. And I think that's where people fell down the most, is if they tried to keep it for themselves. So me and my best friend, we used to revise always together. It was a group of 4 of us. We used to go to the Robinson Library, get a room, and just ask each other questions, help people where fall down, provide notes for each other if any lectures were missed, things like that. So I think, yeah, work as a team, and that's one of my best tips for uni.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything to add, Mariko?
I agree with that. I think it's very like individual in terms of how people study. I guess one of the bigger things that I kind of noticed was you'd always, like, we used to submit our essays online, so you would always have like half an hour before the deadline, a bunch of people in the library, like the system will crash, or they were like trying to madly like type and finish what they were doing and submit it on time. Or like people kind of like going through textbooks outside of the exam hall, which is just like normal anyway. But I think my biggest advice on that, I guess, is start early and try and get organised, because there is quite a large volume of information to cover. So if some people are amazing at cramming. I'm definitely not one of them, and wouldn't have been able to get that kind of amount of information down before exams or essays. So yeah, I'd say get organised early.
Brilliant, thank you. And as a careers consultant, I would just add that also applies to any applications you're making for internships, vacation schemes, training contracts, mini pupilages. Yeah, it'll be so much easier if you take your time and don't do it at the last moment. Okay, right. And as I've just brought up vacation schemes and things, I think there are still a few more questions about that in the chat. So I will go into Anonymous, who has a question for Mariko and would like to know your top tips for writing VAC schemes and internship applications.
I would say, I feel like this is probably all the standard advice, but make sure you're really well researched on where it is that you're applying to, and that your application is tailored to that particular firm or organisation, because it's quite easy to tell if it's not. And also from your own perspective, whilst like obviously you just want/need a job when you graduate, it's also good for you to kind of get to know the firm a bit better and decide whether it's somewhere you genuinely want to work or not. So that's kind of helps you with the process of doing that. I'd say try and speak to people that work there if possible. I did that when I was applying, and that was quite a helpful way to get some insight into what life was like there at work and what the culture was like. And it's useful to mention that in an application, and I did in some of my applications. Again, kind of something different that other people won't have. Other things on applications are, I suppose, all the basic stuff like making sure that it's well written and like grammar, spelling, etc. is all correct, because that's a big part of the job. And then I'm trying to think of the specific questions I was asked on forms. But I'd say I suppose this isn't so much of like how to write a good application, but more to help your application process, is don't write anything in there that you're not prepared to be questioned about in an interview. So I think I know that I made the mistake of doing that on one of my applications, and then came to have a really technical interview about it, and I didn't really know enough about it to be able to speak about it. So kind of learned that lesson the hard way. But I'd say, yeah, make sure you're confident on everything that's in there, and think about all the work experience, extracurriculars, sports that you play, anything, how any of that can fit into your application. And I think I made like a table of everything that I did and all the key skills that they were looking for, and just tried to match it up and then try to put that down somewhere on the form.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And Nasheen is asking, did you find that vacation schemes are quite competitive?
Yes, just because you know that there's only a certain amount of jobs and the candidate, like there's a bigger number of candidates compared to that. But equally, you should take like comfort in the fact that if you've got on a scheme that the firm is seriously considering hiring you, they invest a lot of time and money into it, so you've definitely done really well to get to that point. And there's not really too much you can do to like affect someone else's performance on it. It's kind of down to you and yourself. So whilst it is a relatively like competitive process, it's better to just kind of focus on yourself, make sure your work's good, and you know, you're making an effort to talk to people and network, etc.
Yeah. It's just worth saying, I think, that some of the larger firms, I don't know if your firm do it, Mariko, but some of the really largest firms actually offer dedicated events for first-year law students.
Yeah.
They will run open days in their offices, and often engaging with those in your first year can kind of help get you kind of into the swing of it. You'll start to build up your knowledge, you'll be on the firm's radar. So they could be worth looking out, you know, if you're interested in a certain type of firm. Okay. And I guess me mentioning first years actually takes me to Sana's question, which I guess we've kind of touched on, but this is, let's put it in the context of this specific question. What would you recommend doing in first year that would be helpful when applying to future jobs?
I think kind of getting a good start with your academic side of things is really helpful. For a training contract perspective, they're the only grades that firms have for you from university when you apply for your job. So when I was given my job, I don't even know if I had my I wouldn't have maybe even had my second year grades out when I did my final interview. So they do purely base it on first year results and predictions based off of that of what you'll graduate with. And then getting an early start with extracurriculars. So like I think some of the extracurriculars I mentioned earlier in the talk, I started on majority of them in my first year. And then I also did, I think, make the most of holidays. Like I did some volunteering at the Citizens Advice in the summer of my first year. And during quieter like periods of that, when I'd sort of done all my work, I would research about firms and training contract deadlines and how to make applications, and kind of had to think about all of that. So when I started second year, I knew what firms I wanted to apply to, I knew the deadlines, and kind of had that sort of planned out in my mind. So that helped with a bit of organisation.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything you'd add to that, Amy, kind of looking back, maybe thinking about your first year?
I would say, I hate this word, but network. And network, all it means is just reach out to people. I didn't have a really good legal network, if I'm being honest. But like Mariko, my parents were lawyers. I didn't know any solicitors. And I think that is kind of where I fell down as well. So I got the legal experience in third year, but in first year, I think just reach out to people. If you're interested in something, use LinkedIn, reach out to people, ask questions, be curious. I'd say it's a top tip. And people will come back to you. People want to help you. Just like today, ask the questions you want and go out and go to law firms and give you a head start. I got into finance because the solicitor I shadowed at Legal Care said solicitors don't have a very good finance knowledge, and I wanted to stand out from the rest. So I went into finance just to get a bit of experience, to be honest, and I ended up staying in it. So yeah, be curious, ask questions, and make friends, go network. Definitely just get ahead of the rest.
And just to say that that kind of approach, like reaching out to people, it comes to some people quite naturally and easily. It's kind of in their personality. I think it's fair to say not everybody finds that kind of thing, kind of, it comes to them naturally. And if that is you, then, you know, come and see the career service, go and speak to your tutor, let us kind of help you make sense of it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, just to add, I was one of them people. I had a bit of like imposter syndrome at university. I didn't reach out to people at university. I didn't go to networking events because I was a bit scared of doing them. And now that's a huge part of my job and it's my favourite part. So I think try and push yourself out of your comfort zone if you can. And like Jos said, reach out to people because people are very willing to help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such great advice about just pushing yourself gently out of your comfort zone, if you can. Okay, I've got a question here from Sana for both of you, and maybe starting with you, Amy. In general, sort of what does an average day at work look like? And if you don't have an average day, maybe tell us about yesterday or something.
Yeah.
And do you ever find it repetitive? So that's to you, and then I'll move on and put the same question to Mariko.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'd say my job is very varied. So I'm a paraplanner at the moment, which is kind of similar to a paralegal, kind of helping the financial planner with their work. So I'm not going out meeting clients yet, but I'm preparing the annual reviews, which is a client document. So that is essentially the financial planner goes and meets with the client, does a fact find out as much information as they can, provides the paraplanner, me and the team, with the information, and we create the advice for them in a report that gets sent to the client, or the financial planner presents it to the client. So that's my like typical task, but then every day is varied. Meetings with different teams. I'm on the apprenticeship, so there's a lot of workshops and presenting skills. But for instance, there's a lot of like socializing outside of work and also inside of work. So on Thursday, I'm meeting with a solicitor's firm. We're going to their firm in Manchester. They're pitching to us. Then we're going out for dinner with them after. So I wouldn't say my job is very repetitive. The annual reports could be, but every single client is different. They've got different needs. I'm a little bit nosy as well, so I find it really interesting finding out about all the different clients. And it's also, it's the finances. Not many people really openly speak about their finances. So we're in a very privileged position to be able to help them with that. So I wouldn't say my job is very repetitive. It's different every single day. And that's one of the main things I really like about it.
Brilliant, thank you. And same question to you, Mariko, your average day at work and whether it can ever get repetitive.
Yeah, I'd kind of say similar to Amy in that my work does vary. So I'm qualified into employment, so I do a mixture of sort of employment tribunal work, which is like contentious litigation, normally representing employers in that process, general sort of advice. So if they're looking to change people's employment contract or make people redundant, or sort of have issues with managing an employee that's not doing very well at work, we'll sort of advise on that. And then I also do the sort of final third of work I do is corporate work. So whether that's helping with like if a company is buying another company, helping the sort of reporting on what their employment situation looks like, or negotiating like the key agreements around retaining or basically getting rid of senior people from different companies. I get involved in that too. So my day kind of varies between having sometimes calls about these matters directly with clients or with other members of my team. Sometimes I'll be drafting legal documents or correspondence with other parties in the litigation, or doing research on topics that come up around that. So, and then aside from that, I now don't attend the tribunal that much, but sometimes, particularly as a trainee, you get the opportunity to go watch your case in person. And sometimes if it's like a smaller hearing, I'll do my own advocacy for that. So it varies day to day. Majority of the time, I'm either working at the office or at home. So it's mainly sort of desk-based, but there is a variety of tasks to do within that. In terms of it being repetitive, not really. I think that a lot of the skills you use are similar, but the topics and how they come up with every individual client is different. And also kind of similar to what Amy said, I'm quite nosy. So when people have got like drama going on at work, or like, I don't know, the things that people get up to work is quite interesting. So I think it just we have some interesting cases that come up.
Brilliant, thank you. And just leading on from what you were talking about there, it's probably a good time for a question from Casey to you, Mariko. And what skills do you think are most valuable when training as a solicitor? And maybe curiosity is one of them, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Curiosity, or like interest in what you're doing is a big one, and it's something that like the firms know that you can't really teach that to someone. You've either got an interest in it or not, and that's definitely really, really important. Other skills are sort of standard ones that you would expect: good attention to detail, ability to like write clearly, to read or sort of digest large volumes of information, research skills, depending on where you're at and what your sort of role is, but public speaking is always helpful. But I would say across all of those skills is that whilst you're expected to have a basic level of ability in that, I've said, for example, sometimes I'm not that confident on public speaking, and they'll give you support around it. So you're not expected to be the finished product in any of them, but they're some of the key skills that are useful to at least have some basic foundations in.
Right. Just interested, Amy, are there how thinking about the skills you use in your job, are there similarities there?
Absolutely. I'd say there's so much overlap. Curiosity is a huge bit. RBC Brewin Dolphin in the wealth management sector, they love like entrepreneurship or thinking of new ideas. And if you've got a good idea that they believe in, they'll roll with it. So you've got a lot of independence and freedom, which I really like. And in terms of skills, the company I work for now, you need academics, but actually to be a financial advisor, you don't actually need a degree. It does help, and a law degree especially helps. But just like being a people person, be able to chat to people, it's the people skills which you can demonstrate from part-time jobs, from extracurricular. That's what I got asked a lot about in my interview. So they can see your CV, but they just want to be able to see that you can speak to people, friendly people. So that's a lot about financial advice is, you're just chatting to people. About 25% of the meeting is finance. The rest is just catching up about how they've been for the past year. So yeah, they're the skills you need for kind of wealth management.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Yes. A question for Mariko from Grace. Sorry, I should have tagged this on before. But Grace is asking, Mariko, how did you find committing to a specific area of the law? Do you find it daunting that you may only practice that area for the duration of your career?
In some respects, yeah. When I was in my training contract, I thought it feels really unusual, and I think it also feels unusual that whilst at Squires we do 6 seats and it's common to just do 4, it felt weird to not literally have a go at every single possibility before choosing one. So it does in some ways feel daunting, but then on the flip side, when I actually got through my training contracts, you realise that you do have a strong most people do have a strong preference one way or the other for whether it's contentious work or sort of transactional work like corporate or real estate, or just general advice. People tend to have a preference on the subject matter, which makes it feel less daunting. And also the fact that within employment there's so many different topics, and there's so many different sort of smaller areas of law that people can then specialise into, or whether it's within my team, some people do more litigation or do more corporate work. There's sort of smaller groupings within that you can specialise into, so it feels broad enough that there's enough to cover that you'll keep learning, it'll keep you being interesting. But yeah, I think whenever I think about my career, as long as it could potentially be, it always feels a bit daunting. But
okay. Which brings me on to a question from Bradley. I'll put this to both of you, but maybe let's just start with Mariko. What has been your biggest regret in your career journey?
I don't know if I specifically have a biggest regret, because I only started working at Squires in 2019, so I've only been like employed full time somewhere for like 4 years, and I've never sort of moved or kind of had a different experience there. So in terms of a regret, I don't have a big one, but in a way I kind of didn't anticipate that I would, because there's time to sort of like, have I made errors and stuff like whilst I've been working and like applying for jobs? Absolutely, but there's pretty much always time to kind of rectify that, or if I tried a seat that I didn't end up wanting to qualify into, well, I had other seats and other options that I could do instead. So whilst it maybe wasn't the perfect experience from start to finish, from when I first thought I might apply for a training contract to now, there's never been anything that I've like particularly regretted, because I think when you make mistakes, you do learn from them. So yeah, I don't know if I've got a great answer to that question, but I can't think of anything else.
No, that's how it is. What about you, for you, Amy? Is there anything?
So I think the one thing that I probably regret not doing sooner, if I was in like your position about going to university, was just try different things. So at university, like different kind of work experiences, different jobs in summer, I just try and get as much experience. Maybe if you want to do law and you want to do law, go get the law work experience, but accounting, auditing, wealth management, any charity work, just try as much kind of different experiences as you can. And that's one thing I didn't do at university, because a lot of my free time in summer and Easter was working, or I spent it traveling. I went to Southeast Asia in first year and I went to Europe in second year. So I didn't have that time to really do work experience. My full summer was spent traveling, but what I would have done was go try different experiences, different sectors, and you'll figure out what you really like in a different sector. And then when you do come to graduating, a lot of people don't know what they want to do, even when they've got the degree, but it just gives you some sort of idea about what you like and what you don't like as well.
Yeah, I'd say, and to go into law because you actively want to go into law, and try things out. Make sure you know the range of things out there. Yeah. Okay, right. Brent has asked, what was the most stressful part of your law degrees? That's
I'd definitely I'd say final year exams, but again, that was probably just lack of routine from me not being on it earlier enough. So the last kind of 2 months I was getting up early, going to the library for 8:30 in the morning, coming back at 4 o'clock for 2 months. So that was definitely the hardest time, but you've got a goal in mind, and like Mariko said, everyone's in the same position, especially in final year. No matter what course you're on, everyone's going to be in the library or at home studying. So enjoy yourself earlier on. I'd say final year is definitely when I got my head down and towards the end, but just get a really good routine and it'll help you so much.
Thank you.
I'd either say, final exam period, or in a way I found second year more stressful than third, but I think it's because I was applying for training contracts at that point. So I felt like there was more for me to balance, whereas I went into third year knowing that I had a job and knowing that I just needed, I needed to get like a certain grade in my degree, but I kind of felt it took the pressure off a little bit of like my extracurriculars, and also like whilst I was in my second year, I was traveling to do interviews and work experience and things like that would sort of take out of term time, that made it a little bit more challenging. So I'd say that was quite stressful at times.
Okay, thank you. We have got one here from Anonymous, actually, that has got a thumbs up, kind of emphasizing it. Your best advice on how to actually study law.
I'm going to answer this on the basis of like how the course was set out when we were there, but I appreciate things might have changed. So they used to give us a general like topic reading list, some seminar, like things that we'd have to specifically read and answer in advance of seminars, and then you'd have like a recommended textbook. So I think what I would do is start with like the seminars and see what they ask you to read specifically about, because what they used to do is that I think the seminars were used largely to like point towards what could come up on the exam, and that would be like more of a focus. So I'd make sure I'd done all the reading for them, and then if the topic was general, and read around the topic generally in the textbook and like the relevant chapter of a textbook. And I think what I'd do is write notes for each topic which incorporated like the seminar notes, the lecture notes, the textbook notes, and any further reading, which makes it sound like my notes were really long, but because there'd be overlaps between all of them, you wouldn't necessarily need to like write anything out twice. You could just skim through the textbook and just add in if there was anything else that was helpful, or if there was a concept that I didn't understand and they explained it in a different way. I'd do that, so that I'd end up with like a finished product of notes that covered everything that I sort of felt like I needed on that one topic. And then I think I'd do approaching exams, I think I do like essay plans and things to work out what I would cover, if like looking at past papers, what had come up and how to approach it. And then the general skills stuff, you do essays throughout your degree, or at least you used to. So you'd obviously do them. I'd look at the feedback, see if I could improve it, chat to the lecturer to try and work on the skills of just like actually writing the essays and answering the exam questions.
Thank you, and well brought to mind after a bit of a gap for you. Anything to add, Amy?
Yeah, I revise very similar to Mariko, but I'd say your lecture notes are really important because that's your basis of what you're going to learn from at the end of the year, which I think I kind of missed in first year. So if you're missing any lectures, try and be on top of it and kind of go back to the lecture, type your lecture notes up. And then what I used to do is kind of subsidize that with reading from the seminars and just condense. So I remember criminal law, there were so many cases you had to remember. And it's just trying to learn the case, but then condense them down. And like Mariko said, the seminars are really useful in pointing you in kind of a direction on what to focus on. So by the end, like for criminal law, I just had loads of flashcards with different case names on. It had no kind of subject or what the case was about, but I know what each case, what the judgment was, what the reasoning was. And it was just condensing it down to the end to be a manageable amount, really.
Brilliant, thank you. That sounds really super helpful advice. Okay, maybe reflecting, both of you reflecting on your time, but also thinking about kind of what you've learned since and what you know now. Grace is asking, how would you go about getting work experience? So
in the wealth management industry, I can speak for that. A lot of that is actually just reaching out to kind of singular people. So if you've got any companies in mind, so IBC Brewin Dolphin, we're a really big company in the wealth management sector, but there is other companies, and just find people on LinkedIn and reach out to them and ask for opportunities. They say no, but people in the office, senior people in the office really like that. It shows initiative. There's not really too much kind of work experience, for instance, structured work experience at my firm, but people reach out, we're always happy to take them. We're actually having a work experience day in August. It's in Manchester there. But we're just going to advertise that on LinkedIn. So yeah, reach out to people. LinkedIn is for wealth management. I know law's a little bit different, but Mariko might be able to help with that one.
Yeah, similar advice in terms of reaching out to people. I got my work experience from like a range of ways, some of which was just like going around with a CV in like the town where I grew up when I was at sixth form and trying to just go door to door and ask whether they would take me on as work experience student. And I did get one of my work experience placements from that. Others was like kind of again, as Amy mentioned, like getting to know people and reaching out. So I'd been to some networking events, met people, and they'd either suggested or I'd asked if I could do work experience with them, and got some placements from that. Also, what was mentioned earlier was like the open days and different things, like formal schemes that firms run. So I applied for some of them and did some of them. And then I think other ones, would have been like university, so advertised through the university type schemes. And then aside from that, although I did have a few work experience placements in the end, I didn't actually have many that were that long for the job that I do now. I think the ones that I had that were like super relevant to the job that I do now were only like the one-day placements, but which I think just goes to show like they don't necessarily need a long list of really extensive work experience that you've worked in the industry for years, because clearly you won't have done. It's just maybe showing a bit of interest and putting down anything that's relevant. And even if it was when I said like I've done work experience in criminal law at these places and it's clearly not what I do now, it's helpful to say why you weren't interested in that or what you learned from it. So I kind of got work experience through like a variety of ways, and then formally by the end of my sort of application process, I'd done a couple of vacation schemes, which were like my longer periods of work experience. But obviously, when I applied for them, I didn't have that experience. So yeah.
Thank you. I think just to kind of kind of summarize a little bit or just kind of tie up what Amy and Mariko were both saying, is when you're looking for work experience, you have to be reactive. So you have to know what's advertised, where it's advertised, and apply for it if it's of interest. But you also have to be prepared to be proactive. So even if we're talking about being a solicitor, if you want to be a solicitor, if you want to work for a larger firm in mainly commercial matters, you are going to find quite a lot of advertised vacation schemes. If you want to be a solicitor, though, and your interest is perhaps more in human rights, social justice, you're not going to find a lot of advertised schemes, and you're going to have to be proactive about kind of contacting law firms that are in that type of work. Likewise for the bar, which I'm very conscious that we haven't talked about today, and some of you might be very interested in that. And please rest assured, it's just our barrister today couldn't make it. There is a lot of information and advice for those of you interested in the bar. But in that same way, some mini pupillage opportunities, that's the name for work experience in the bar, will be clearly advertised. Others, you're going to have to go and knock on some doors. So be prepared for variety. Okay, quick one for me. Dan is asking, in my experience, do Newcastle have good post-degree employment rates for law? The answer is yes, consistently we do. That the overwhelming proportion of law graduates are in what they call professional or managerial jobs within the measure is now 15 months of their degree. So those are the statistics. They do well. They do well. It's a tough degree, and we normally find that law students are very motivated to do the other things, as you've heard from Amy and Mariko, to support their degrees. So yes, they do. Anecdotally, absolutely, yes. They go into a huge range of things. And it's so nice that you've got Mariko here and you've got Amy here, somebody using their law degree in a very traditional sense and somebody who's transferred it to something else. And there's so many, many different things. So that's a very general answer, Dan, but just to reassure you, yes, they do have a good post-degree employment rate. Okay, my very, very final question, and it goes to both of you, is considering your time at university and your own careers to date, which one piece of advice would you like to share with our audience today?
So my piece of advice was actually advice that was given to me at university in my third year by an employer. And he said to me, your first few jobs, you might not figure out what you want to do, but you'll figure out what you don't want to do. And kind of how we've said today, for instance, if it's solicitors you want to do, you might figure out you don't want to work at a small firm, you want to work in a big firm, you don't want to do commercial. And I figured out from my previous job that I really like a job that has a good culture. So I worked in a very fast-growing environment, fast-growing company, but I realized I wanted to be in a very established company that helped progress their kind of colleagues on, lots of learning opportunities, and that's what I valued. So I learned a lot from my first job. So yeah, you figure out what you do and you don't like, and that's kind of part of the journey as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
My tip, I suppose, is kind of similar in the idea of like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to find, you know, the exact right job or exact right career at the beginning. Or I know that when I was at university, there was a lot of sort of talk around when people got their training contracts, whether they would have gaps or in what year they got it and what they were doing after they graduated. And I would say, it's hard because people get caught up in that, but try not to worry about it too much. I feel like in the years since I've graduated, I've seen friends that have went straight onto training contracts, and some of whom have now moved out of law. Some people have got them a little bit later and really enjoy what they're doing. Some friends have become barristers. People take it in loads of different routes. And obviously I'm really sort of early on in my career, and as are like sort of my cohort that graduated. But I think over the years, people tend to change careers or have different ideas about what they want to do. So I'd say definitely get the basics in there of like try hard with the academic side of things, try and get a good, you know, basis of extracurricular stuff. so that you're standing in good stead for wherever you sort of end up going, but try not to put too much pressure on the end result and kind of picking one sort of direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your wise words there, both of you. Okay, so we're coming to the very end of our session today. I'd just like to thank Amy and Mariko so much. Yes, lots of thank yous coming in on the chat. So thank you all for coming, and hope that you'll all have a really great time, and hope to see some of you in the law school, well, many of you in the law school. And yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you everyone.